And it's great to be back this year at VueConf. Thank you for everyone who's attending, and thank you for Jilson for inviting me. Today I've got a short talk, just want to go over a little bit of what we've been up to with Vuetify over the past year, give you a little insight on some of the things that we've been working on and the things that we've brought out to the community, and just kind of give you an overall sense of how the framework is progressing. So we've continued to release regular patches and minor releases since last year. Last year when I attended, we had just released version 3.4, which is a very large release for us. It included data table and a lot of other really important components for the UI. And we've also continued to bring out additional components and add new features and functionality to existing. Spent some time this year expanding and working on the core team. Anyone who works in open source or has dabbled in it will know that developer churn is a real thing, and we have been making a strong effort to try to make sure that we bolster our ranks to continue bringing updates and quality progression for the framework. And the last thing I'm going to talk a little bit about is our ecosystem. We've spent a lot of time this year trying to bolster up the surrounding parts that help make working with Vuetify a pleasant experience, and also giving you some additional features to play with that we'll talk about. This includes new updates to Vuetify Create. This is our boilerplate scaffolding tool for building new applications. Updates to Vuetify Playground and Vuetify Bend. These are places for you to test out using Vuetify and also saving snippets of code for future use. Vuetify Studio, which is our theme and configuration tool that we have had in alpha this year that I'll talk a little bit about later on. Vuetify Snips, which is a new premium component to Vuetify that gives people an option to experience advanced examples to help them while they're building their application to cover the areas that the main documentation doesn't cover itself. And finally, I'll touch on Vuetify One, which is the open source product of all of these little ecosystem parts to pull them all together. I'll start with some statistics. Last year, whenever I attended, we were just above about 2 million downloads per month. And this year, I'm happy to say that we're continuing to grow. We're almost around 3 million per month, with 60% of all of our downloads being Vuetify 3. So for the first time, majority of all downloads of Vuetify are on the new framework, and we're seeing really good adoption there, and we're going to continue to push forward. So we're happy with these numbers showing decent growth in the ecosystem. So one of the releases we had straight up after version 3.4 was in January. We tend to like to do a small kind of maintenance release after we do a large minor. This gives us an opportunity to pick up any bugs or things that were kind of left behind in the process of getting ready for a big release. And this serves no different. We still like to bring in new features and functionality in these small releases. So things like go-to scrolling, if you're remembering of Vuetify 2. This was a framework feature that didn't make it over to version 3 early on. It's now available in the framework. We added and are continuing to add new CSS utility classes that make it easy to configure your application beyond what the normal is that we provide you. And we added a lot of new features to components like vImage, adding the ability to have some of the basic stylization that you have on like cards and sheets with rounded border and specific color and fallback. We updated multiple form components, trying to improve the experience through accessibility, as well as just user interface and the styling options. And we also made some massive updates to Date Picker to make it more useful as well. Continuing on, in April, we released version 3.6. This was another semi-large release that included multiple components coming from labs. To touch on labs very briefly, it is a way for us to let users test components before they're in a complete production-ready state, but are mostly feature complete. Allows us to receive lots of feedback. It allows people to implement these components in before they're actually released in the framework, And so far, it has been a very successful initiative. And with version 3.6, we were able to bring 5 new components to the framework. VFob is a layout-aware component that works with Vuetify 3's nested layout system to give you on-screen controls. It works with things like speed dial, definitely good for mobile view, giving your users navigation and action options from a single point. Added components like empty state, which if you remember back early in the version 1 days of Vuetify, is kind of like Jumbotron. It offers a way of providing a blank message or a list of options that you can perform on a blank page. Think of like a Gmail when you have no emails. And then brought back Sparkline, which is what you see on the screen right here. This was a Vuetify 2 component. It's an easy way for you to be able to visualize data to a user in either a line or a bar chart. And then finally, vConfirm Edit. This is a component, if you're familiar with the V2 Edit dialog that we removed, this is the replacement for it. It offers you a way to have data, confirm data before it's persisted. So if you want to have a model or a set of data that the user is going to change and you want them to be able to confirm before you persist that to the model, that's what this component is used for. We also made, and this is kind of an under-talked about thing, but we added support for CSS cascade layers. Early on in the framework, we had a massive use of important that we rectified in version 2, but we still have some leaking throughout the framework, and cascade layers is a way for us to be able to stop that leak, but also provide more options, make it easier for users to customize styling. It's currently disabled by default while we're testing it, but next year it will be enabled and allow you just easier customization options whenever you're working with Vuetify. And we brought back the mobile data table view. So like I said before, we introduced version 3.4 where we brought out data table, data iterator, a lot of these data display components. And one of the most requested features that we had with the data table was a mobile view that we've brought back so that you can provide a nice experience for users when they're on your site in mobile. Next up, our last release, which was in August. This was, again, a smaller kind of maintenance release, but we did manage to get some pretty cool features, and one of the coolest features for me was the vMenu submenu support. Now, we've always had some level of submenu support, but it's never been this clean, it's never been this performant, and it's never been this easy to set up. So we put a lot of effort into improving the accessibility of the component and the performance since it's used throughout the framework. And so far, we're really happy with the results. We also did take an opportunity to introduce some new labs components. So labs components, again, they're components that are pre-production for your testing purposes, but allow us to receive good feedback from people that are using it on the ground. We were able to bring back one of a highly requested and necessary component for all frameworks or for a lot of websites, the tree view. But we've also brought back time picker and a new component for manipulating number inputs, which is vNumber input. So as I said earlier, we spent a little bit of time expanding the core team. Developer churn in open source is difficult. We had a lot of developers who, they all donate their time, but life changes over the years. And so we're going on almost 8 years of Vuetify right now, so a lot of the initial developers that we had that were helping us build out the framework have either moved on or have other responsibilities and priorities, so we are making an effort to rebolster our ranks. And so far this year, we've added 4 new core team members, fixed across various roles of the ecosystem. This is probably the most that we've ever added in a year, and we're continuing to do so. And really, what the goal was is to have more people spread out in the ecosystem to work on different features and different things that help bring that development experience together as a whole. And we're always looking for more contributors, so if you ever want to get into open source, feel free to come out to the booth, the Vuetify booth out there, and talk to me after this. Now, one of the things that occurred when we brought on some of these new core team members was a new core team member, and I'm not going to butcher his name, but I'm pretty sure it's Zhao Quinn. And he is the lead maintainer behind the Vuetify Nuxt module. and had been, and we had reached out to him to try to bring him on board and improve our Nuxt documentation, improve our Nuxt support, and show the community that we do care about proper Nuxt compatibility. So along with him came the first-party Nuxt module that's now part of the Vuetify documentation, and we also have some new create options that I'll talk about here in just a second that'll allow you to scaffold your Nuxt application with Vuetify Rapid. And that's where we come to Vuetify Create. So if you're in a terminal or a website right now, you can go to tryvuetify.com and open up a terminal and paste the code. In 1 minute, you can have, well, I'm only talking about our Nuxt starter templates here, but we have 3 regular generic templates as well that you can choose that contain different functionalities based upon whether you need routing or store management. And they're all set up. So you can, in just a few commands, you can have full support for TypeScript, latest TypeScript and ESLint, configuration, and a new Nuxt project in less than a minute. And we're going to continue to put effort and cycles into making sure that that experience when working with Nuxt is as fluid as when you're just working with regular standard Vuetify. All right, so I'm going to touch up here on some ecosystem updates, and I'll give the addresses for these as well on the slide. Our Vuetify Play and Vuetify Bin. Vuetify Play, if you haven't used it, serves as our playground where you can interact with Vuetify and create components live in the browser. And Vuetify Bin serves as like a alternate to Paste Bin that doesn't have ads, and is a way to store various code that is or isn't Vuetify for future use. These both now support remote saving with Vuetify 1, so you can now save and organize and keep all of your snippets of code in one place when working with Vuetify. Vuetify Studio, which today we're announcing is now publicly available in beta. If you go to studio.vuetifyjs.com, you can check out our new configuration tooling that we're working on to help you configure new themes and new options within Vuetify. We're continually working on it, and we're excited that it's now going to be open for everyone to use. And lastly, Vuetify Snips. This was an effort that we put forward earlier this year when sponsorship was tough. It is a happy medium between not gating functionality behind a paywall, but offering a premium product for people that can use it. It is a collection of advanced usage of Vuetify components, different configurations for e-commerce and marketing, and it's designed to help you, build new applications rapid, fast. And all of this is connected by Vuetify 1. This is our open source software that we use on all of our ecosystem sites. It allows us to maintain API information for all of the various ecosystem parts, and it makes it easy for us to integrate into the new ones. And I just want to give a special shout out to our sponsors that take care and make sure that Vuetify keeps running. These guys are huge and have made sure that the free framework has remained free and continue to update for everyone's enjoyment. And that's all I've got to talk about today. Thank you very much. Yeah, that was Vuetify, a year in review.
All right, give it up for John. All right, we've got a handful of minutes for questions. Who has a question for John out there? If not, I have a lot. I will get started. Okay. I will get started. Yeah, one thing I was wondering was, how do you decide what you're going to work on, how you're going to prioritize the next component that you're going to put energy to? Is it exclusively feedback, or are you using any other mechanisms?
It's pretty much feedback, but it also depends upon if we have a champion for that piece of functionality. Okay. So Vuetify has become large enough to where certain developers are more in tune with sections of the framework. I mentioned earlier we had a developer who was working on the core team. He got reassigned at his job and wasn't working on Vue anymore. And so like a section of the area that maybe we're all comfortable with working in, he was responsible for. So a lot of times it depends upon not only is there motivation from the community, but do we have someone, a champion behind that to work solely on it. As far as what I work on, me personally this year I've been really focused on infrastructure stuff for Vuetify and kind of growing. We've had a lot of issues with sponsorship and support, so we've been trying to figure out new ways to excite the community and bring value offerings to people.
So yeah, because there's more. I'm guessing there are things that you need to fund beyond just asking for folks' times. Yeah. So was wondering, as folks get into contributing to the open source project, I'm sure you've got folks at all sorts of different levels who have experience contributing in the past. For someone who would love to get involved, what have you seen as a kind of like a good stepping stone? What are some of the first tests that people take on?
Well, I've noticed that most of the people that make pull requests on their own first typically last longer. I don't know why.
Interesting. Okay.
We have a pretty extensive contribution guide on our documentation as well as in the repository. We also have a very friendly Discord community. A lot of times people will reach out beforehand, and what ends up happening is kind of what I was saying before with where we need a champion for components, is usually people that are coming in for open source contribution, what makes them stay the most is if they find something that they can have a part of, that's like kind of they take ownership of in a sense. And usually that comes whenever they make the initial pull request on their own, I've noticed. But reaching out on Discord and checking out our available documentation are also still very good ways.
That makes a lot of sense. And so, I've heard a lot of opinions out there in terms of when picking up a component library that some folks want it so that they can move really quickly, and then other people tend to be very opinionated about starting from scratch. What's your experience been there in terms of what sorts of folks or teams or products have you seen it work really well with? Or on the other side of that, are there situations where it might not be the right answer for a team?
Well, I'm biased because I've been working in it so long, and I just haven't come across anything that we haven't been able to recreate with at least minimal effort in the framework. Obviously, Vuetify is material design based. We do have a long-term goal of making that more agnostic than it is right now. But what I do find is that most of the time we're able to handle the use case for the user that they're trying to make in their website. I haven't come across too many situations where it's like, okay, we can't do that, unless it maybe involves like a custom component like a Gantt chart or something along those lines. Obviously there are components that we don't have, but I'd say for the most part, 90% of the stuff that I've worked with and companies that I've worked with, we have a use case available. It sometimes isn't always immediately obvious. And
you might see folks use it they use your components to some extent, but then start to introduce more complex components that they.
And that's the best part about the way that we have Vuetify set up is it's all compositionally built. So if you want to take our components that we use to create what we've given you, you can just recreate your own interpretation of it if you want to, and that's true for most of the components.
Great. Okay, we got a question in the back.
Yeah, is this thing on? Okay, cool. Hey, John. I work for a pretty big company. We've been implementing Vuetify in our apps over the last couple of years or so. Two questions. One question is, one of the challenges we've kind of run into is bridging the gap between our UX team, who's designing our own custom themed framework, and actually getting it onto the screen. Is there any tools we could be using to kind of bridge that gap a little bit closer? Right now, they're just building out components in Figma, I believe. And it's close, it's very close, but there is some back and forth to say hey, out of the box, this component isn't gonna interact the way that you think it is. So is there something out there that we should be using to kind of help bridge the gap between that?
Well, that was meant to be Vuetify Studio. So it's a little bit different than, so we've had two versions of it. The initial version you can customize every single property for every single thing in the framework. But unfortunately, like I had mentioned before with developer churn, This is all open source, and so the person who was working on it became inundated with work and wasn't able to continue. So we had to work with a new developer who produced a really awesome project. It's actually built using Nuxt, one of our first projects built using Nuxt, and it's right now it's mostly style configuration, but we have received a ton of feedback since the update, and we're going to be bringing back some level of component customization. So I would say that that would be the best bet to look at, studio.vuetifyjs.com, and watch for updates there.
That was actually my second part of the question was if there was anything in the roadmap on the theming side and the custom theming creation. We've gotten pretty far with it. Like I think it's worked really well for us, but if that's kind of in the future and what we should be looking at, then I think that should help us solve some of those problems. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anybody else out there? We've got one over here. There we go. All right.
It's on? Okay. I was wondering what you think is the most important element of the adoption of a component library. So whether or not you think that developer experience being the best brings the most users, or the best documentation, like what do you think, which of those things, I guess, contributes the most to Vuetify's success?
Probably the documentation. There's definitely some improvements that I want to make to it, and there's some areas that can always be improved. But over the years, that's probably been the biggest, was the documentation, mainly because we have so many examples that often you can always find something that you're looking for. And this is kind of where snips came in to kind of bridge the gap between what we can offer in the documentation, because there's only so much we can go over, and being able to show you more advanced use cases and different ways that you can utilize the framework. I'd say that the documentation was number one, but our tooling was probably a very close number two. It's so easy to just spin up a new project that's ready to go, that just works out of the box. And that has definitely led to a lot of the success of the framework, I think.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Anybody else out there? All right, well, I will, let me end on one question then. Kind of going back to similar question I asked Evan earlier in the day. What have you found to be both the hardest and the most rewarding pieces of working on this open source project?
Hardest is probably developer churn. Developer churn and funding. It's very volatile. But the rewarding part, honestly, is getting to speak to people and see the stuff that they've made with Vuetify. It's pretty incredible whenever you spend some time how deeply customized you can make it and how personalized you can make it. And that, for me, has been the best part, is being able to see people's applications and see what they've been able to build with the framework, for me, yeah.
That's wonderful. All right, give it up again for John Leider.
Thank you.